So I've dedicated the past 2 years working with ACL patients and I've packed all that experience into this video. And today I'm going to walk you through a comprehensive guide on mid-stage ACL rehab, along with all the essential exercises that you need to know for each of your body part. So let's dive right into it. So for the first thing in mid-stage ACL rehab, right, it really will link back to the first video that I made on early stage ACL rehab. And you basically want to have full knee extension. That's going to be the most important thing. The secondly is having a knee flexion at 140 degrees or more. Next, we're trying to really, in this stage, aim for the quad strength to be at 90% of the non-injured limb, ideally even higher at 95% for them to return to sport, because and quad strength is one of the risk factors for your ACL rupturing again. And for the fourth thing about quad strength numbers is that I use this Easy Force device, right? And it basically tells you how much force that you're pushing into it and it measures quite accurately. And I've used this with all of my ACL patients from basically month to month to kind of test them out. And I found that a really good mark for them would be around 500 to 600 newtons. And this is basically for both of the legs for knee extension and for hamstring strength, right? For knee flexion, I did this by, having them on prone and basically telling them to resist at a 90-degree knee angle. And I found that a really good number would be above, ideally 235 newtons for it. And for the hamstring strength, ideally, I also want them to be at 80% of the quad strength to kind of return to sport. 70% is basically the baseline for it, and 80% will be what I'm looking for when I'm trying to really push them to get back into their sport. So for full knee extension and knee flexion, please make sure that you got those first before you kind of progress to the exercise that I'll show in this video. And if you do, let's kind of get right into it. So there's going to be a few things that I'll be talking about today. So the first thing will be working on your balance. This is going to be super important. And maybe I'll also talk about a little bit about gait. So maybe some exercise that you can do to work on your hip flexion and knee flexion. Nextly, I'll be having a section on, targeting joint health, and then into quad strength development, hamstring development, glute development, and finally return to running. So I'm going to basically nitpick 3 exercises for each of those, and you're going to have a list on what you can do in order to return to your sport quicker and progressing to, of course, the late stage ACL rehab after. So this is basically the timeline, for mid-stage ACL rehab. It's a very, very long process. It will basically be from maybe the first to around maybe 4 to 8 weeks mark, right? All the way to potentially, the 6th month or the 8th month mark. So without further ado, let me show you some of my favorite exercises. So in regards to the category of balance and gait, I'm going to show you 3 exercises. So for the first exercise here is the single leg balance. So of course, at this stage, you should be pretty confident in a single leg with your quads completely extended or in a quarter squat. So to kind of progress this a little bit harder, right? I just want you to have your eyes closed, right? And just really trying to balance it like so. And after that, once you feel it's kind of easy, right? To kind of make it more spicy, right? You can just kind of turn your head left and right. And of course, you can try to have some support on the side initially when you start doing it. So you're just trying to really look to the right and then look to the left and look to the right, look to the left. This will really challenge your vestibular balance as well. And it's just another way to really fire on all those ankle, your calves, your quad muscles to kind of co-contract with each other. And of course, that leads to kind of the second exercise, which is having your heels elevated. So instead of just having your heels on the floor like so, right, you're going to try to balance on a single leg with the heels not touching the floor, right? And of course, you can start with eyes opened, and then you can want to spice it up. You can turn left, and then you can turn right without your heels dropping at all. This will really, really challenge the ankle strength, but also the core strength, because you're kind of basically in this quarter squat position the entire time. And once you kind of get the hang of it, you can use a ball as well, right? And just basically tossing it left and right, by yourself. Or if you have a partner, he can toss it to you, right? And you just basically try to catch it, and then you can throw it back, right? Some kind of audio cue or visual cue for you to throw to whichever hand he is kind of handing it, or whichever hand that you should be catching. And then for the third exercise, right, I would really want you to find a wall or a partner that you can do with. And then from here, right, you're just gonna stand on single leg, right? And you're just going to throw the ball off the wall, and then you're going to try to catch it. So if you're doing it with a partner, the partner can be behind you, and he's gonna throw the ball to whichever side it is. You might not know where it is, and then you're just trying to catch it with your hand, and you're just gonna toss it back behind for him. So of course you can do this on your own as well. So you can try to challenge it a little here, right? Try to get a little further, try to get a little lower, right? So then you're kind of squatting into it. You can get it higher as well, right? Try to get it outside of your reach, right? With your elbows completely straight, or it can just be in front as well to kind of progress this exercise. And as a bonus one for gait, right? I usually like this to kind of really work on full knee extension and also the hip flexion if you're still kind of struggling with your gait. And it could be if you're at the 1 to 2 month mark, right? So what you kind of want to do, right, is make sure, let's say I'm working on the right leg, right? I want this to be completely maybe a foot behind my left, right? You want to find a sturdy rack. And from here, you just want to really squeeze those quads, right? And really try to get yourself into this full knee extension, which is super important. And from here, you're just gonna try to get up, right, as high as possible and try to get to your knees, right, parallel with your hips, because that will eventually bring your knees into a 90-degree knee flexion, right? Just due to gravity. And you're just gonna hold it there for a few seconds and you're gonna step back down, right? Really trying to activate those quads, really trying to push your knees back, working on that terminal knee extension. And you're gonna get back up. You're gonna hold it there, get back down, try to really push down. Try to push your heels down into the floor and getting back out. And so we're going to move on to the next category, which is targeting your joint health. So at this stage, I really still want to stress the joints a little bit, right? Of course, progressively overloading it, not jumping by a large margin. And of course, just trying to get the full range of motion training as possible. It's just really good for the joint health, trying to get the synovial fluid into the knees and just getting it moving well. And of course, it will also help with removing some of the scar tissues if you're feeling that at some range, it just feels really hard, is like a hard end feel, or is more like a between soft and hard end feel, and that could be scar tissue within it. So this is kind of what the joint health section is about, and I'm going to show you kind of 3 exercises that I really like, and this of course can be interlinked with, you know, quad exercises as well. All of these exercises, you know, is not really just a category of its own, it's also interlinked with others, but I would say it kind of preferentially biases it a little more towards the joint health aspect. So for the first exercise here is the Poliquin step up. So ideally you can find a heel wedge about 25 to 35 degrees. And what you want to do, you just put them on the floor, right? And ideally, you know, forefoot is on the floor, heels are on the wedge. And from here, you're just gonna drop down and come up, right? Try to keep this leg completely straight. You're just gonna tap the heels and come up, thinking of the floor like eggshells, right? And toes a little bit pointed outwards while you do so. So instead of it completely straight like this, I just want the toes to be maybe 5 degrees pointed outwards. You're just gonna be repping this out, right? And of course, this feels easy. Then you can just hop onto like a little bit of a platform, right? Just a little higher. And this would challenge the knees and quads a little bit more, making sure one thing is that after ACL rehabs, most people will be trying to shift into the hips, right? Really trying to hinge into the hips instead of loading the quads. So a very important thing is just keep your torso upright. So then you're actually loading the quads instead of your glutes, all right? And of course, after, right, once you feel pretty confident with this, then you can go up even higher, right? Onto here, right? Just challenging it. And then the same thing for gently tapping and getting out. And your goal for this is to work up to 6 inches. So that's about the height of an iPhone. And most gyms do have a 6-inch platform itself. So that you shouldn't be too stressed about it, right? If you don't, you can just stack up a few weight plates like what I'm doing. And then you're just gonna drop it down and get out. And once this feels easy, just use dumbbells to progressively overload it. And so for the second exercise here is the full range split squats. Some of you might even call it the AT split squat, also known as, very popular, and it has helped many people, you know, get out vaping. But I've also seen studies or report that, not study, but I've also seen people who has knee pain, you know, actually made it worse because of that full range of motion training. So my take is like, it just really depends on the context, the situation, not really the end all be all. It's just a tool in your exercise toolbox. Yeah. So with this, right, what you want to do is you basically want to start off with a bench, right? This is like completely straight behind you, right? Just trying to really lengthen that quad as well, especially after ACL surgeries. This can be quite tight on the upper end of the quads. And from here, you're just trying to shift your knees as far as possible, right? Your heels can elevate as you want, so then we're just trying to really get that full range of motion, right? And you just gotta push back out. And then again, so breathe slowly, pulsing in, and pulsing out. The best thing that you can do here is actually spend maybe 3 seconds in this position, really trying to pull yourself down into this range of motion range that you got, right? And initially it might only be here, right? And you're already struggling and you're just trying to get out, right? But as time goes on, right, you should be able to get all the way. So if you do decide to use a lower platform, you can stack up some plates like this, right? And basically the same thing, right? Making sure your back knee doesn't touch the floor. Or if your quads are actually really tight, I won't really mind if you just keep it a little bit bent, right? And just really trying to get this full range of motion, right, of the front knee. So you're just trying to get as much as possible, right? Heels elevate a little bit, it's fine, right? But you don't need to straighten your back leg as much. Just so because we're actually trying to just focus on the injured limb, right? And for the final one for quad strength is the VMO squat. So this is like a bilateral squat pattern, right? We already have two unilateral exercises, so might as well just kind of show you a bilateral. So what you can do for this one is you can find a foam roller that's external heel, right? You're really trying to drive your knees as far forward as possible, right? And you're just really trying to maintain it there. A very common issue is that most people will kind of sink into their hips instead of driving their knees forward, just because, as mentioned earlier, the body's trying to compensate by offloading the quads and trying to hinge into the hips and glutes a little more to kind of offload it. So you really want to make sure your torso is upright and you just kind of come back up. So you're just trying to drive your knees forward, right? Once it touches, you know that you're in a good position. Try to maintain contact with the full roller and then you'll get back out. And again, just try to control. Really try to control slow, right? And make sure your torso is not just collapsing. Yeah. So let's see from the side angle so you guys can see a little clearer. Literally same thing, right? Same basic thing, right? Make sure your torso is upright. Get it back out. Again, right? Maybe for some people, you might feel a little bit of pain here, right? If it's a lot more than like 3 out of 10, just come back up. Don't need to push yourself. But if you're able to kind of, maybe it's like under 1 or 2 out of 10, you try to sit down and get back out. So those are the 3 exercises I'll do for targeting joint health for missing ACL rehab. So now moving on onto the third category, which is developing your quad strength. Okay, so I've kind of got 3 exercises here. And the first one here is the wall hack squats. So I've kind of done this in the early stage rehab already, but I'm going to emphasize it again just because I really like this exercise to load the quads and it just kind of biases it a little more. So right here, you just want to stand on like something with your heels elevated, like a heel wedge here, or you can just use a plate. And from here, you're just gonna try to slide down, right? Try to go as far as you can, right? So usually it's about here and we just slide back up, slide down, slide back up. And of course, to progress, you can use dumbbells on the sides to kind of load the exercise, right? Making sure your butt, your upper back, your head is just sliding against the wall. This is more like a mid to late stage ACL rehab. So what you want to do, right, is the same thing. We're just gonna do it single leg and coming back out. Single leg, come back out. And of course, if you can, try to get even lower, just so you can target quads a little more. So I'm going to do it on the left side as well, just to show you guys. All the way down, get up, slide down, get out. And now for the second exercise here is the single excavator squats with a foam roller external cue. I really like using foam rollers as external cue just so it can give you an external cue, right, of course, to push your knees forward. So then you're not actually hinging into the hips and loading the quads. So what you want to do, right, you can of course find something to hold on to for support. You can use like a TRX, right, in front of you to kind of hold on to it, or you can just use something like a sturdy rack. And from here, right, what you want to start off with is maybe, let's say I'm working on my right leg, right, you just want to try to get your right knee touching it, right, and then you can elevate something, right, with a platform, just so you're not going into as much depth or range that you're not comfortable with. And from here, right, you're just gonna try to go down, right, and coming back out. And again, trying to drive your knees forward, right, to come back out. So then this will load the quads really well. And of course, once you feel that's relatively easy, try to take a weight plate off, and this is going to be the same thing. So here, right, make sure you're not too close, right? Make sure it's a little further, just so you're challenging that range of motion that you're kind of translating your knee forward, and you're gonna get all the way down, good, and come back out, yeah? And once you feel assisted is relatively easy, you can then do it unassisted, right? Finally, if you can, which will, and this will be probably near the end of the mid-stage rehab, right? You can just do it here, right? With your knees touching, right? Without your ankles touching, and coming back out. So again, touching, 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 touching the entire time, and getting back out. And for the last exercise here for the quad strength development is the RFS with a foam roller external cue. So for this, right, I already kind of explained the use of foam roller, right? You can use any other external cues from here. So what you want to do now is just put a foot behind it, right? With your foot flat on it. And then you want to put a foam roller just a little bit in front. So then you're actually trying to get your quads touching it and get it back out, okay? Get your quads touching, drive all the way down and coming back out. Once that feels really easy, just increase the distance a little bit. Same thing, just try to touch it, good, go back out. So this, right, will help with really activating those quads more, right? Because you can also, right, for elevated split squats, RFS, you can kind of do it like this, right, going backwards. So this will load the glutes more instead, or other than you loading the quads in this position. And now for the fourth category, right, we're going to talk more about the glute strength. So glute strengths are super important just for, stabilizing the hips, which will eventually help with stabilizing the knees as well. And of course, not only do we need to work on the quad strength, we also got to work on the glute strength because they both are pretty much interlinked and they work together as a synergy. So I'll show you 3 exercises that I really enjoy. So for the first one here is the cable curtsy step down. So this is really, really good, right? You can start off with a fairly light weight and the height doesn't need to be too high. And what you want to do is basically have your inner foot against the edge. And from here, you're just going to want to lean your body a little this way, gently tap your foot on it and coming back out. So this would really, really work on those glute med and glute min, right? You feel it right all on this outer side of your hips, right? So I really prefer these more than clamshells. Not that I'm hating on them. It's just because it's more loaded, right? It's more, you can kind of see, you can objectively track, the weight that you're doing it. You can tell, right, how much the knee is kind of coming forward and the range that you're kind of getting into these squats. And now for the second exercise is the side plank hip abduction. Have your knees, hips, and shoulders in one line. And from here, right, I just want to make sure these are all in line, elbows right underneath the shoulders. And what you're wanting to do is basically try to do a side plank, right, with your knees, right, and trying to lift this hip up whilst also lifting this knee up. So it's going to look like this and come back down. They both are going to work together, right, as one. And you really, really feel the downside glutes working, the downside side abs working, and the top glutes working as well. And finally, we're back to the bench again, and we're just gonna rep out some single leg hip thrusts. So you can, of course, start with 2-foot hip thrusts, right? And once that feels relatively easy, I really want to challenge you with the single leg hip thrust, which will really work on, your glute max. And this will really bring the glute max into full range of motion. And I just really, really enjoy them. And even as a bodyweight exercise, it's very, very tough. So basically very easy, right? Scaps underneath the bench, legs straight, and then you're trying to drop all the way down without your back arching. Try to keep your ribs right above your pelvis. And from here, you're just gonna come up, right? Hold it at the top, get down, try to push your knees forward, right? And this will really activate the glutes. And then back, right? Push this knee forward and back. Super simple stuff. And that's for the glute strength development category. And by this point, for the 5th category, right, you might be thinking, what about the hamstrings, right? And this is where I'm going to be talking about them. I didn't forget about them. I just put them a little bit further back. I'm going to show you, 3 exercises for it. And they're really, really good to kind of lift up your core in hip extension or with knee flexion. So for the first one here is a dumbbell kickstand hinge. You can use it with a kettlebell as well. Doesn't really matter. But what you want to do is having the contralateral hand. So if I'm working on my right hamstring, the left hand will be holding onto it. So it's very, very important to not shear your knees back, which is a very common mistake. And you might feel like a hamstring stretch, right? But that's usually just your nerve being stretched and not actually the hamstring muscle itself. So trying to make sure your knees are in the same place once you kind of put that in the position, right? Your knees might have been a little more in a little less in the starting position, but once you start the exercise, your knees should never move, okay? And from here, we're just gonna really hinge down, right? And coming back out. Of course, you can do it unassisted like how I just shown you, like this. And you're gonna feel your glutes as well. But of course, if you can or you can't, just use a sturdy rack and just assisting yourself back up. And now for the second exercise here is the seated hamstring curls. Of course, you can do it with the lying hamstring curls or kneeling leg curl machine as well. But the seated hamstring curl is one of the variations that will put your hamstring through the most length, which is what I enjoy most, especially after ACL surgeries. And from here, what you want to do, right, just lock your legs in, right, have your toes pointed upwards. But the variation you'll be doing right here is the 2 down, 1 up. So you're going to go down with 2, right, hold it at the bottom, lift this leg up, and slowly control 1 up. And again, one more time, go all the way down and slowly control up. So especially in mid-stage ACL rehab, it's very, very important to work on your eccentric strength of the hamstrings so that it will quickly catch up to the non-injured limb hamstring strength. And finally, if you follow me on Instagram, you know that this is probably one of my favorite exercises for the hamstrings for co-contractions. So this will really light up your calves and your hamstrings and just really focusing on the knee stabilization. So you want your forefoot to be on the foam roller right here, right? You're just gonna lie down, and from here, right, the further your legs are, right, basically from you, right, it's going to be much more loading on the hamstrings. Of course, when you start this exercise, you can just start here, right, forefoot on, or basically your balls of the foot on the foam roller, and from here you're just going to lift up a little, right, and you can just start off like this, and you try to keep your hips as low as possible to the floor, right? Just think about letting a credit card slide through, so you're not trying to really lift it up, right? Once this feels easy, of course you can kind of go a little further, right? Once that's easy, you can do a single leg, and then the favorite variation that I got is actually doing oscillations with it. So let's say I'm here, right? And then I'm basically just rolling over the top of the balls of the foot and the bottom of the balls of the foot. So here, right, I'm just lifting it, rolling it here, and then you're gonna come back. Just very, very small range of motion, but you feel a huge burn in those hamstrings and calves. And of course, once this feels easy or relatively easier, what you want to do, right, is single leg. And this is very, very challenging. And this is a very, very good exercise to kind of scale your hamstring strength. So at this point, I've basically rambled on a lot, and this is more than enough exercises and content if you're currently suffering from mid-stage ACL rehab. And I also want to just put one more category, right, which is return to running. So I'm going to show you kind of 3 exercises, right? Once you kind of have the quads and hamstring strength down, your glute strength pretty well, and probably about the 3 to 4 month mark of ACL rehab, right? I even push some of my clients to go from maybe, doing these exercises only at the 4 month mark, just so I'm playing the safe game. And I'm going to show you the 3 exercises that I do as not only an exercise, but also an assessment and checklist to make sure that they're able to handle the force that they're going to return back to running. So there's a variation that I like a lot, and I post them a lot on my Instagram and my free community in school, is the slump bounce, is a plyometric exercise. But what the difference is between that and this is that you're going to be basically on single leg, right? You're going to bound to the other leg, and you're just going to basically sink into knee flexion, and then you're going to come up, down, right? Come up, down. You're just trying to really stick this landing, right? And allowing the knees to go forward. This is very, very important. And this is actually a very, very similar force that you get from running, because running is basically a series of falling, right? You're basically here, fall, 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 right? And by doing this drill, it's a really, really good way to kind of make sure that you're actually loading into the knees and making sure that the knee joint is correct. So of course you can just start with this regression, right? Right here and drop into it. Right here, leg straight, drop into it, right? And after that, then you can progress to actually a bound and come up and into it. So you're gonna have a little bit more hang time and try to stick that landing. So for the second exercise here is the box drop split squat force absorption. So compared to the one earlier, there's going to be a little bit more force to handle for your joint. And I'm going to show you right now. So basically, you want to find something higher, right? Maybe like 6 to 12 inches. Just start off with 6 and then go up to 8, 10, 12, and slowly build it up. And from here, what you're wanting to do, right? You want to have a foam roller just in front, just so it gives you like an external cue. As I mentioned earlier, always really, really good. And from here, I just want you to drop into it with one leg and trying to really get your knees over the toes, right? Trying to touch the foam roller or even try to knock it down and making sure or try to keep your heels on the floor. So I'll probably lift it a little closer and we're going to try that again. So here, boom, and then you're going to come back up again. And now I'll show you one more time, right? So basically here, keeping your left foot on the bench here, drop, hit it, stick it, and that's 1 rep. And for the final exercise for this category of return to running, I would like to use the single leg hops depth drop, but with the same leg. So most of the time, right, maybe when we're starting, and I don't mind it, right, initially, is you're gonna use the left foot on the platform, and then you're just gonna drop with the right, and you're gonna stick it, right? So of course, once that feels comfortable, right, this would be a little bit more challenging, right? I want you to actually hop with the same foot, right, down, and then you're gonna hold that, yeah? Just so this will really work on that reactiveness of your ankle as well and your Achilles. Of course, you don't need to hop by that much, but those will really challenge your single leg stability, your balance, and you're actually not trying to hike your hips down. So like I can do this before I drop into it, right? But with the right foot, right, I can just basically do it the same. And this will really challenge the knee joint a little bit more with more force. You can give that a try and you definitely tell a big difference if you just do it like this, right? And if you do it like this. And to conclude this whole video and summarize it up for you, I basically kind of told you the rehab requirements required for, your mid-stage ACL rehab, right? And then I also talked about kind of the categories of what I'm kind of looking for as a physiotherapist. And I've also broke down my 3 basically favorite exercises for each of those categories, which includes single leg balance, targeting joint health, quad strength, hamstring strength, glute strength, and return to running. If you're maybe struggling with your ACL rehab and not sure how to break through that progress, right? Or maybe you're just plateauing with your current therapist or not knowing basically how to progress. You can basically check out my free gains chamber community, and within there you're going to have my support in there. You're going to have a weekly call in there for Q&As, and there's also going to be a ACL program within it, and this will basically help you out with your current situation. So, and within the community there's going to be so much more stuff like plyometrics, like improving your mobility, improving your strength. And if you're wanting all of that for free with no catch at all, join the community, click on that group description link below, and I'll see you on the inside.